Sam Seder on the Majority Report. Emma Vigeland out today. Joining us now, Chris Geidner, proprietor of the Law Dork newsletter on Substack. Chris, welcome back to the program.
Hey, Sam.
So it is, there's so much going on. And there are my understanding is there's something like 80 active cases now that are not all focused on what, Doge is doing, but certainly focused on Doge and the slew of executive orders that Trump has issued. And we should say that a lot of times these executive orders aren't really anything other than sort of like letters of intent.
There's
go ahead, explain that to us.
Yeah, there's sort of three types of executive orders. There's like actual executive orders that, like, if you would read about it in a book, what you would be talking about, that it's directing something, it's something that is within the president's authority and he's doing it. And then there's other executive orders that in the past probably would have just been labeled like presidential memoranda that says, like, I'm directing the Secretary of Education to look into X. And then there's a third one, which is, I think, what you were getting about, which is more like, it's just sort of like Donald Trump's thoughts, or more likely Stephen Miller's thoughts, something like that.
But even in that third instance, it's, if I was to sit here and go like, man, I like being in a room full of fans. When, like I like the air circulating, somebody working here might go, oh, well, I'm going to turn on a fan because I know Sam likes it. I mean, some of the agencies do that, right?
Oh, no, the problem, and this is what we've seen in a lot of the litigation, is like in some instances, what they're doing is so slipshod that it both makes a lawsuit easier and makes proving the things that you normally need to do in a lawsuit more difficult.
Because it's so vague. It's it's like you're arguing with air in some level. And I should also add,
sometimes that's ultimately good, as we saw like last Friday in the challenge to his anti-diversity, anti-DEI order, when the Judge Abelson enjoined provisions of those executive orders, a Maryland federal judge. One of the bases that he used for enjoining it was the fact that it's unconstitutionally vague, that it in effect was not telling all of these employers, nonprofits, outside companies, what it was that the order was even telling them they needed to do in order to comply with it.
All right. And let me just also say, just for clarity's sake, there's never been an instance where I have suggested that there's something I like in the office and anybody reacted to it. I just want to make that clear. Okay. So broadly speaking, we have 80 cases or so that are ongoing. Who are the plaintiffs here? Like in broad categories, and how much is that, are we seeing for the first time, like sort of like planning that has been going on the legal front? We're not talking about like the political front, because I'm quite convinced that there wasn't a lot of planning going on the political front. But on the legal front, it really feels like the people for 3 or 4 months, groups, maybe longer than that, had been sort of like gearing up. This is how we're going to deploy in these instances. Give me a sense of who the broad categories of these people are and how much of that planning has actually been going on.
Yeah. So, there's two, not to fight the premise of your question, but like in addition to plaintiffs, it's really important to look at the legal groups behind them. In some cases, it's more important who the lawyers are at the bottom of the filing than who the plaintiffs are at the top, in terms of understanding where it came from. Now, I think you're right in terms of like groups
go out and find plaintiffs to carry this out. And
so, what we have, I mean, they're really right now in this first little more than a month that felt like a year of Trump 2.0. What we have is sort of four main areas of litigation. We have funding litigation, that are these various funding freezes. We have removal litigation. We have constitutional litigation. And then we have sort of the grab bag of other lawsuits, primarily against Doge, that have existed. And so what you have within that is different groups of plaintiffs. Most effective, I mean, obviously in the removal cases, the plaintiffs are the people who were removed. We have the one case that went up on the shadow docket briefly to the Supreme Court was the Hampton Dellinger, who is the U.S. Office of Special Counsel, not to be confused with Special Counsel Jack Smith and the other ones. But
this is not the DOJ one. This is like to protect whistleblowers in the U.S. government.
The whistleblower agency. Yeah, this is, I mean, sort of the ideal agency that Donald Trump would not like. So it's not surprising he is trying to fire the guy in charge of that. Within the removal, so that's limited who the plaintiffs are going to be. They're going to be the removed
head of one of the EEOC commissioners, one of the National Labor Relations Board commissioners. I mean, right.
There have also been like just more random employees who have been suing, saying that they've been improperly fired. Now, but those are all going to be plaintiffs.
Now, yes. Now, but the lawyers representing them and the groups that I mean, and I guess that's what I was, getting at. The groups behind it, have there been guys, people, broadly speaking, groups that have been gearing up? Like, he's going to come in. We know what Project 2025 is about. We know what Schedule F is. We don't know exactly who the plaintiffs are going to be, but we know the nature of the arguments we're going to be making, and we know which jurisdiction we want to bring this in. And that's what I want to get to in a moment. But give me a sense of those groups.
True. Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, national security counselors have been sort of focused on some of the I mean, it's in the name, some of the more national security related issues with both on the firing front and the Doge front. There have also been just more experienced employment lawyers. I mean, obviously the federal government employment is a huge area of law, and so they're doing that. Then we've got the funding cases, and Democracy Forward has been very prominent in those cases. There have also been
who's Democracy Forward?
Democracy Forward is sort of out of Trump 1.0 organization that Sky Perryman is running, and they've brought I believe like nearly 24 cases already.
Were they gearing up for this? Like,
they were ready on day one to be paying attention to some of, I mean, keep in mind, you've got like the things that Trump did in his first term. You knew he was going to be trying some of them again. You had the very prominent things that he kept talking about on the campaign trail.
Right.
And then you had Project 2025. And so you did have sort of three broad areas of plans that you could be looking at to be preparing. And sort of as he did these different things, some of these cases were filed, and you've gotten some injunctions already. You've gotten TROs. Some of the actions when either Doge went into an agency or a new acting director was put in that was affiliated with or seen as very sympathetic to Doge. One of the key areas has been CFPB.
Yep.
When they sort of took over CFPB, that's obviously been something that Republicans writ large and the Trump administration have been trying to dismantle in various ways over since it was put into effect. And the Democracy Forward brought litigation that's ongoing. I believe there was a hearing today in Maryland over their preliminary injunction request in that case. But, and this I think is really important, is that because of all of the litigation, something that we are seeing is that DOJ and agencies are in some cases willing to reach temporary agreements that they say, like, we won't take action while this case is pending, because they're just literally
stretched out too thin.
They're stretched too thin. And
I mean, that's what I have to say. Like, I've been very impressed about is that you're watching the response from the legal sort of, broadly speaking, the legal response has been so comprehensive in many ways that it feels like it's overwhelming. From our perspective, and in a political sense, and certainly in a news sense, it feels like the administration is overwhelming us. Like, they're flooding the zone. But from a legal sense, it feels like the plaintiff class, broadly speaking, and all the sort of groups that are bringing it back, have met that flood, have pushed back, and we're ready for it in such a way that now the flooding, to the extent that it's happening, at least in the legal front, is going the other direction. Like DOJ, because these guys are not. The one thing I will say about it is, like, they're going in to wreck government, and you don't need a lot of expertise to do that until you have to justify it in a court of law. And then all of a sudden you need to know what you're doing. And there's just not that many of them.
Yeah, you need very specific expertise, because you're going to be, especially, I mean, like, we are seeing in some senses sort of I would argue, a slightly more lawful reversal of what we saw in the Biden administration. Like, everybody's not just going to 2 judges in single district divisions like we saw, but we are seeing, like, everybody's learning about new courthouses. Everybody's learning about the District of Massachusetts. Everybody's learning about the District of Maryland. And because those go to the First Circuit on appeal, they go to the Fourth Circuit on appeal. So it's...
All right, let me slow you down here, because this was my next question, and I'm not sure people fully understand this. So during the Biden administration, what conservatives were doing to stop Biden policies, they were going to the Fifth Circuit, which is Texas, Louisiana, and maybe Oklahoma, is it? And Mississippi. Because the judges there, because of the nature of the way that federal judges get nominated, all very Trumpy, very conservative. And there were specific districts within that circuit where there's only 2 or 3 judges, and one of them is that guy Kaczynski or whatever. Kaczmarek. I want to say Ted Kaczynski, but pretty close. But they kept going to him, and he had the ability to basically freeze across the country. Mr. Priven, whatever it was.
There are 2. So in like districts, the Northern District of Texas, which has something like 20 judges, there are divisions, and there are 2 divisions that if you file a case in that division, it has a 100% chance of being assigned in the one single judge division to Matt Kaczmarek, and in the other one to Reed O'Connor.
So this is known as
using that
venue shopping, and the federal judiciary attempted to reform the rules on venue shopping, and they got so much pushback. I guess from, I don't know who,
from the Northern District of Texas,
from the Northern District of Texas.
and McConnell and Trump. But
so they stopped doing that. And now it's flipped. Now the plaintiffs, the people who are being represented, the judges, the lawyers, they're going and they're doing their own venue shopping in Massachusetts. And how are they deciding that?
They're doing it in a way that we've always seen. Like they're not going to a single judge. They're just saying, like, the District of Maryland will take us to the Fourth Circuit. And the Fourth Circuit is lopsided Democratic appointees, and we want to bring our appeals there. The First Circuit, that's New England, that has currently all Democratic appointees. And so when they bring it to the District of Massachusetts, they might get a Republican appointee, but they know that on appeal, it will go to the First Circuit where they think that they'll have a better shot. And so
where is our Kaczmarek?
In some ways, I would argue we don't have a Kaczmarek because our judges follow the law. Like we have them. Our version of a Kaczmarek or Reed O'Connor is a really smart judge who we think we're right on the law and we think we're going to get a really good ruling. I think a good example is some of the cases that we've had this week. Judge Amir Ali was one of the last judges confirmed in the Biden administration. He's sitting in the DC District Court. He had run the MacArthur Justice Center before he was a federal judge. He's very smart. He's was a progressive advocate lawyer, and he's now a lifetime tenure judge on the DC District Court. And so, I think that liberals were happy when the USAID State Department funding case got to him. But his rulings have been detailed, have been smart, have been designed to be able to be upheld on appeal, which I think is the difference between sometimes I think Matt Kaczmarek is issuing a decision knowing that even the Fifth Circuit, as conservative as it is going to overturn some of it, and he's just trying to get 50% of it through.
And giving somebody an opportunity to audition for the Supreme Court for Donald Trump. Let me just go back to one thing here as you talk about this, because maybe this is now, 15, 20 years ago, but Harry Reid sort of nuked the filibuster when it came time to fill the DC Circuit Court. And, we've heard people say in the past, he should have never done that. That's why the Republicans were able to, get rid of the filibuster for the Supreme Court. I'm quite convinced they would have done that anyways. We watched Mitch McConnell refuse to even have a hearing 9 months out for Merrick Garland. Not necessarily my favorite pick in that instance anyways, but then basically bring a judge in within 3 weeks before an election in another instance. But that DC Circuit still remains I think with maybe a 6-judge majority in the full en banc Democratic appointed. It could be more than that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But in moments like this, that is huge, isn't it? Because many of those cases, and that happened 15, 20 years ago.
Yeah, I think it is impossible to understate the importance of the judges that Biden was able to get through. The reality is that if we still had a filibuster, yes, some of the Trump appointees wouldn't have gotten through. But I think you're right that Mitch McConnell, as soon as he needed to, would have gotten rid of it at any level. I think that the end result is that we were able to get really excellent judges through who would not have been able to get through in a past era. I think the importance of professional diversity. Biden was the first president who really focused on getting
defense attorneys, civil rights attorneys,
ideal civil rights lawyer. Like in the past, there used to be like you'd have one or two appeals court judges who were public defenders, like whereas like Biden had dozens.
Yep.
And I think we will see that. Honestly, I think will be one of the longest lasting legacies of the Biden administration is how differently in a decade the courts are going to be looking at these issues, because we just have judges who actually fought the government. And that like was just not the case, because even Democrats were appointing former prosecutors
and just all corporate attorneys. You know, I mean that, and we should also say the level of aggressiveness that the Biden administration did in filling these judges means there's a lot less for Trump to low hanging fruit for him to fill.
Unlike the
Obama administration. Yes,
which I mean that was not all their fault. The Republicans had the majority in the Senate, but the fact is,
it was mostly his fault. It was mostly his fault.
Yeah, I mean, but at the end of the day, like you ended up with very, very few appeals court vacancies. I think there were like maybe 2 or 3, which is just an incredible job. Like it was so important, because I mean, I'm knocking on wood because it'll probably change the second after I say this, but like we are yet to see any Trump nominees for courts. And part of that, I think, to go back to our larger discussion, is because they've been too busy putting out these amorphous executive orders and then needing to go to court and defend them. And the one group we didn't get into, and I know we're running out of time, I just want to make sure I don't leave them out, is that the civil rights groups have been bringing those constitutional challenges. We didn't get into that, but like NAACP Legal Defense Fund, Lambda Legal, ACLU, like when it comes to the constitutional challenges, National Center for Lesbian Rights, these anti-trans orders, the anti-DEI, diversity, resegregation orders, those traditional civil rights organizations are on it and are bringing their lawsuits as well, and they've succeeded in getting either temporary restraining orders, preliminary injunctions, or the other thing we talked about, where like they'll just DOJ will talk with their client and get them to agree to take no action while litigation is ongoing.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.